The Catholic Church never said a peep about pulling something like this together. Now, I don't agree with everything the church says, but they got a lot right. My strong Catholic faith helped me hold it together for all my 93 years. God only knows what you have faith in. Nature, Buddha, those damn phones. Well, curveballs will be thrown at you right to the end. But having a strong faith, it helps you find your way. Now, I don't know how long I have to speak with you or what the rules are with all this. Guess I'll just keep chatting while I can. I know I look the same. Things are a little bit different. I don't need my hearing aids, and my neck pain is mostly gone, and my thoughts are clear. I know I lost a few marbles in the end, but I was aware of a lot that was going on. My thoughts got slippery, but there was so much I still wanted to say. Maybe that's why I've been given the chance to be here with you. Where would I begin? Well, over the course of my life, people ask me the same questions. How did I do it? How did I raise 7 children? How did Reg and I stay in love for 53 years? And how did we run it in together for 31 years? How did I endure once he was gone? Oh, Reg was a good guy, and we had such a wonderful life together. And we brought good souls into the world who spread good cheer. Reg was all about teaching our kids to focus on the power of positive thinking, and it worked. Our kids can raise up a whole room with their good vibes. Oh, he was a special guy. The moment I shook his hand, I knew he was the man I would marry. I dated a lot of fellas, sometimes 2 in one day. But Reg, he was the first guy to really catch my fancy. He was tall and dashing. Oh, I remember how he looked right at me with his steely green eyes. He had sharp features and bushy eyebrows, but he also had a warmth about him. Reg was a smart, funny, good-looking guy who wasn't full of himself. He had the confidence to let me be my own person. Well, I knew right away that he was nothing like the other guys I dated. You know the kind of men. Like women under their thumb. Think we're on this earth to do their bidding. No. Reg let me be my full self. And boy, oh boy, did we have chemistry. Oh. We both felt it right out of the blocks. Never looked back. Well, I first met Reg at Barbara and Buzz Carter's engagement party, and things moved quickly from there. Reg had a steady girlfriend, but he broke up with her once he met me. And I was home for Christmas vacation from Smith College, and Reg was home from Dartmouth. And there was a big snowstorm that day. And on his drive from Scarsdale, New York to White Plains, New York, his old clunker of a car broke down. Reg got out and walked the last 7 miles to get to that party. That showed some spunk. We were married a little over a year later. Well, Reg's mother didn't approve of me because I was a Catholic. She wouldn't allow her son to get married in a Catholic church, so there was no church. We got married at my parents' house on February 26, 1949. 9.5 months later, baby Reg the Third was born. Needless to say, things were working out well. 13 months after that, another son, Crawford, was born. Daughter Polly arrived the next year. McGregor, another boy, arrived soon after that. I mean, the kids just kept coming. By 1965, we had 7 children. In those days, that's what happened when you were Catholic. Well, I actually gave birth to 9 children. We lost 2 of our boys. Angus died of the measles when he was just about 4 years old. And Rodney was never able to leave the hospital. He died when he was just a few months old. And there were complications. But I know I'm going to see Reg and our boys very soon. And before I do, there are a few things I'd like to explain. It might be hard to understand the choices we made and how we lived our lives back then. I mean, you would be surprised how much the world has changed. We didn't have access to a lot of information. I mean, there were a couple newspapers. We had 3 TV channels. You couldn't watch TV after midnight. And we certainly didn't have shelves full of books on how to raise our children. And we did not talk about our emotions all the time. We just did the best we could. And our world, it was so much smaller and simpler. Maybe I could show you. It does seem like I'm making the rules here. If you could see what it was like to move from Greenwich, Connecticut to Etna, New Hampshire to start a new life, things would make so much sense. I say we give it a whirl, and if we get back in time, I might look younger, a little more fetching. I can't imagine anything on those darn phones could be more interesting than a dead old lady showing up to share a few thoughts. When you live in Greenwich, Connecticut, you're either attending or hosting a cocktail party on any given weekend. I'm not even sure why we call them cocktail parties. We drink, there are hors d'oeuvres, and there's no dinner, but they last until well after midnight. Someone jumps on the piano, Reg plays the drums, and we all dance the night away. And we hosted a big party here tonight. And let me tell you, there was a lot of drinking going on, a lot. And after everybody left, Reg sent me upstairs to unwind while he cleans the kitchen and whips up a couple scrambolis and toast for a late dinner. And somehow he can do all that after a long night of drinking martinis. Reg can drink with the best of them, but I can't complain. He can get very opinionated about politics and what the kids are up to, but he's a lot better than my own father, who is a raging drinker and a pain in the rear end for my mother. I don't know how she puts up with him. I mean, they have fought about his drinking since the day that he got married. He hasn't slowed down a single bit. And my father has had a girlfriend on the side for years. Thelma. She is a gold-digging vixen. He owns an apartment in New York where they sneak off for their trysts. Oh, it's repulsive. You know, Reg, he may drink too many martinis, but I decided I'm not going to fight about it. And for heaven's sakes, Reg doesn't wander, cooks and cleans, helps take care of the children. Actually, Reg didn't start drinking until he went in the Navy. And when he returned to Dartmouth after the war ended, he really stepped it up in the drinking department. And now so he goes from Dartmouth drinking up a storm, and now 3 martini lunches, they're part of the routine at Compton Advertising. And being in the ad biz, I understand it's a high-pressure situation, commuting into New York. Oh, and when he comes home, he's stressed and overwhelmed, and having a few more drinks calms his nerves. He makes good money, but we both worry that the rat race might kill him. His own father dropped dead of a heart attack on the paddle tennis court at age 58. Reg and I, we've been talking about making some changes that would help him relax and have more time with the family. Well, we love our friends here, but it's overwhelming. It's relentless. Greenwich, Connecticut is relentless for both of us, really. And his mother, she also puts pressure on him to step into the role as the patriarch of the family and to be successful in his job. She's high-strung and demanding. I mean, Reg is high-strung as well, but he got his values from his father, Sweeney, who wanted to make sure he wasn't spoiled and knew how to treat all people with kindness. And when Reg was 16, Sweeney encouraged him to get a summer job as a garbage man. Marion was horrified because she's a snob. She worried that her poor dear might be teased by the fellas he worked with or by his classmates. Reg believes being a garbage man made him a better person. She does get a few things right, though, despite her constant concern about image. Marion makes sure that family get-togethers happen regularly. His extended family, they have gathered for generations for everything, holidays, parties, reunions. They are a strong clan. And my childhood was very difficult. And I vowed that I would not repeat history with my own family. It was clear Reg would help raise the kids. And he also taught me that nothing is more important than family connection. And after we lost our 2 boys, it became clear that Reg and I, we needed to be on the same page. And we put our focus on our relationship first because we believe that infects our kids in positive ways. You know, connected parents give kids a sense of security. However, I don't think it's good for kids to think they are the center of their parents' lives. I mean, it's not healthy for them. It's just, they need to be independent. They need to be independent, and that's really important. So I really care about our kids. I spend time with our kids, but really they're good at taking charge on their own. They really are. And Reg, though, he can't help himself. He, on the weekends, he plays sports with them, he sails with them, he does work projects with them. And they're lucky to have a father who keeps them active and teaches them skills that they're going to have for the rest of their lives. You know, we now that we have teenagers in the house, we give them a lot of responsibility, including taking care of the youngest girls, Winky, Sarah, and Cindy. It's a team effort around here. Polly and McGregor help out with everything from bedtime, bath time, diapers, discipline, and entertaining the girls. McGregor teaches them all kinds of sports. Polly plays games with them, reads to them. Here, as I say, if kids are going to be capable adults, they need practice making decisions and working things out on their own. Well, there are times we've had to step in, actually. And one of those times, all the kids in the neighborhood used to take a path through the woods to get to the North Street School. After a few sightings of this creepy older guy who would jump out in the path wearing a polka-dotted bikini. And sometimes he was sighted wearing slinky lingerie. Kids were horrified. They didn't tell us for a while, but when we found out, we decided it was time to take action. Now, of course, Reg had all the adults in stitches. He nicknamed the guy Bikini Bob. But it's a serious situation. I mean, imagine how much that man was suffering to do something like that. Oh, the high pressure. My goodness. Well, we reported it to the police, and when he was finally arrested, it turned out he was a banker in New York and a father of 4 living right here in Fairfield County. Once again, the pressure in this community makes people do crazy things. You know, I heard that through the grapevine that Bikini Bob, got a warning and was allowed to go right back to his job after he was arrested. And if you ask me, that is Greenwich, Connecticut in a nutshell. We did not stay in Greenwich, Connecticut. One night, Reg arrived home after getting off the train from New York, and when he walked in, I could feel his tension all the way down the hall. Daughter Winky was 13 at the time. She had just returned from New Hampshire, where she had been at ski camp, and she was upstairs. She bounded down the stairs, 3 at a time, to greet Reg at the door. She said, "Dad, the Ashleys are selling the inn, and they think you and Mom should buy it because you would be good innkeepers. I peeked out the kitchen door to watch his reaction. He paused and told her to share a little bit more. Thought to myself, this could be just the thing. Over the years, we had stayed at the inn, and for Dartmouth reunions, and sent our kids to ski camp starting in the 1950s when the Keene family owned the place. I could tell Reg's interest was piqued by the idea. Life at work and at home was overwhelming for him by that time. He became infuriated by the normal antics of our teenagers and was becoming a tyrant like my father. So I convinced Reg that we should at least pay a visit to the Ashleys, and I couldn't see any harm in just having a conversation. So we drove up to Etna, New Hampshire in an absolute blizzard. By the time we arrived, the electricity was knocked out of the whole neighborhood. The only heat in the inn was from 2 fireplaces. And when we walk in, there were about 20 teenage girls sitting on mattresses they had pulled from the bunk rooms, and they were snuggled under these old, scratchy wool blankets that looked like they were from the Civil War. So we plopped our girls right in with that crowd and cozied up by the other fireplace with the Ashleys to learn what it is like to run an inn. Well, it sounded challenging to say the least. Any rational couple would have turned on their heels and head right back to Greenwich, Connecticut. Despite the chaos of the storm and how daunting the whole thing seemed, somehow Reg and I, we could imagine being innkeepers. And the Ashleys didn't even have to do much convincing. By the end of the night, we decided to go for it. Our parents and our friends in Greenwich didn't understand why we wanted to start a whole new life. My friends thought I was nuttier than a fruitcake. Reg's mother, she was undone at the thought of her son cleaning toilets for a living, making beds. Ooh. And the fellas at Compton Advertising, they insisted that Reg was abandoning a brilliant and successful career. What is success when it eats away at your soul? So, in July 1971, we all moved up to Etna, New Hampshire, and never looked back, even with 4 kids in college. Winky started high school, and Sarah and Cindy entered 3rd and 1st grade. We named the place Pierce's Inn, short and sweet. And during that first year, Reg fretted and worked so hard to fix the place up. 25 pounds dropped off him in a flash. He drank about 1/4 of the booze he drank in Greenwich, and we were eating much healthier food. But really, we had time to relax during the week between the busy weekends. Reg had talked a lot about spending more time with the kids. So I immediately put him in charge, making breakfast and packing lunches for the girls while I slept in. How would he have learned the ropes if I was in the kitchen looking over his shoulder, right? Well, after the girls got on the bus, he brought me breakfast in bed. He played sports with them after school. He helped with homework. People were shocked that I expected Reg to rise up to do these tasks, and even more shocked that he did. Well, we had hoped that the move to New Hampshire would help Winky calm down and keep her out of trouble. Winky's always been a highly emotional person, and She was only 5 years old when we lost baby Rodney, and then Angus died just 5 months after that. And Angus was her partner in the family. They were best friends. She was inconsolable. So we had to do our best to redirect her and really help all of our children move forward. Pierce's Inn felt like hope for a fresh start. And my strong faith helped me handle all of those big changes for our family during all of those years. Sitting in St. Denis Church, it brings peace to my heart. I also pray every single day. Reg was raised a Protestant. He didn't go to church very often. But as the years went on, he grew more interested in what I learned from my faith. Of course, he loved the Catholic restrictive rules because he thought they would keep our kids out of trouble. Raising teenagers in the 60s taught me that I needed to adjust my thinking about some of those rules. Now, I never questioned my faith, but I've changed my opinion about some things like birth control and premarital sex being sinful. As a Catholic parent, rather than put my head in the sand, I decided to embrace the aspects of the church that work for me and let the rest go. Reg has a nickname for me. He calls me the Great Swami. Because whenever we follow what my gut tells me, it usually works out well.
Maybe we'll make the millions or have ourselves some children. Oh, what our love could do. Maybe we'll live in Vegas or a house with picket fencing. Oh, what our love could do. If I got you, babe, you got me. There ain't nothing we couldn't be. From year 1 to year 52. Oh, what our love could do. Maybe we'll pick up fishing or start a family business. Oh, what our love could do. Maybe we'll find some best friends or a dog named Fred, and that's it. Oh, what our love could do. If I got you, babe, you got me. There ain't
Reg and I have had to reevaluate our idea of what working out well looks like. After running an inn for all these years, parenting all those kids, it has become clear that we will need to adjust and adapt until we exit this world. Nothing has turned out how we expected it would, yet somehow it's kind of working out. Oh, I'm not sure we would have made this move to New Hampshire had we known the obstacles we would face. There are times we feel like we are on the brink of disaster, and then we manage to land on our feet. Not often in the spot we expected, but that's the fun of it all. We learned to be innkeepers in the trenches. In the beginning, Reg's Dartmouth friends seemed to think Pierce's Inn was a clubhouse for the gang. And don't get me wrong, get a huge kick out of Reg's Dartmouth friends, but, of course, Huntley Bennett and Wemo Phillips and Swampy Marsh, they're all great guys. But there were other guys who showed up for a weekend without a reservation and seemed to think they didn't need to pay for a room. They all had good jobs, for goodness sakes, and we were barely making a dime. So we made some changes. And Reg, he was just too nice. So I started handing over the bills after breakfast, and you better believe they paid. Oh, there were weekends. We had so many unexpected guests that we had to rent out our daughter's rooms. The dog would sleep on the bottom bunk with one of Reg's classmates who was drunker than a billy goat. And his third wife would be on the top bunk with all of our cats. I mean, some of what goes on here, it's beyond belief. Oh, and at one point, we were losing so much money just trying to keep the place standing that it looked like we'd have to sell it and move. Made it through the energy crisis by the skin of our teeth. Some of the changes we made. I took over the business part. Reg got a second job in a local advertising agency. So he'd work all weekend, jump back into innkeeping on the weekends. He was exhausted. And then it wasn't a big boost, but the biz started to pick up just a little bit, enough that I needed Reg back full time as my head housekeeper and Mr. Fix-It. And instead of hiring a new cook, we decided we could save money if I did the cooking. Now, I didn't think I had it in me, but by that time, I had pulled off things I really didn't think I was capable of before. And whenever we are up against it, we get right up against it, we just adjust, we adapt. We joke that Reg holds Pierce's Inn together with good vibes and duct tape. I have doubts sometimes. I start to wonder, should we be doing this? But Reg reminds me of all the ways that we have turned things around in our lives. And right here at Pierce's Inn, we know how to lift each other up. And of course, there's times we have to drag each other along. One of those times happened after a busy and profitable 2 weeks. We had just had event after event, had a big chunk of money that Reg took to the bank. And I woke up from one of my brainstorms, from a dead sleep. I woke up and I announced it was time to replace the Garland stove that was 40 years old, and that would cost as much as Reg had just deposited in the bank. Well, the moment I said it, his eyes went wide, his hands went in the air. He looked like he was in a state of apoplexy. I said, Reg Pierce, we can't take money to the grave. We may as well put it to good use. He said by lunchtime he could feel the money slipping through his fingers. But when the new stove arrived, Reg said, the great Swami always knows the next key move. We became more selective about the groups we hosted. The atrocious behavior of drunk Dartmouth men and women who snuck into the guest rooms, it was just too much. And Reg was absolutely repulsed by what he had to clean up after they left. This generation of college students, they can't hold their liquor like we did in our day. Of course, weddings are also very tricky because there's always an incident. And luckily, I'm good in a crisis because Reg almost collapses. One time, our dog took a big bite out of a 4-tiered wedding cake. The guests happened to all be outside gazing at the view, while daughter Sarah calmly cut off the section of the cake where the dog had bitten. She patched it up with extra frosting left by the baker, and then she carefully positioned it in the corner and nobody noticed. Sarah has helped us avoid a lot of disasters. But she's grown and busy with her own life now, and that's that, you know? Even though our kids, they're all grown up, they're all adults living in the world, but they still call us for advice when they have a problem. And Reg becomes consumed with how he can help them. He loses sleep after these calls. I sleep like a lake. I don't think another thing about their problems till they call back. Reg used to tuck his feelings in, but now he's starting to share a little bit more of what's in his heart, especially when he works on a project with one of the kids. And Crawford lives nearby, and he is helping Reg fix up the inn. Crawford, he was a real hippie back in the day. And he is encouraging Reg to be more open about his emotions. He tells Reg he loves him out loud, and then insists that they hug with both arms, heart to heart. Oh, it's nice having someone else nudge the old fellow along. And I'm not sure Reg would have moved in that direction if we were still in Greenwich. We're glad we aren't dealing with the challenges some people face in Greenwich. We hear about our friends and our neighbors whose kids have joined the Moonies, other cults. A few have been accused of rape and even murder. Oh, we did escape. Somehow, though, my parents' nonsense crept all the way north for years after we left. My father, he had the gall to promote his lady friend Thelma from secretary to business partner and then marry her immediately after my mother died. And 2 weeks before he died, he changed his will to read, "Treat my children as if they never existed." Oh, I was getting in my car at the grocery store and down at the Hanover Co-op, and some legal processor comes right up to me to get my signature on the will, on the changes in this will. Can you imagine? Right there in the parking lot at the Co-op, I learned that my father left Thelma everything. All his money, our house, all my mother's personal belongings, even family portraits and photographs. I just decided that I need to accept this situation and put my focus on our own family, on the inn. And luckily, the inn keeps us very busy, almost too busy at this time, at this age. When I first suggested to Reg that we take a vacation during mud season, he seemed to think we should wait until we were on more solid financial ground. I said, "Reg, that is for the birds. We've been working our tails off for years. Solid ground, it's a myth." Well, after a few more Aprils of pumping water out of the dining room every single time it rained, Big Reg decided a vacation was in order. And our friends, they ask us about our retirement plan. Well, we don't have one. We like being innkeepers, all the interesting guests. It's fun. People also wonder how Reg and I live together, work together, and stay in love. Well, of course, we have arguments, but we never go to bed angry. And most of our conflicts are about politics or the right time to put the potatoes in the oven, and occasionally about parenting. But I think it is good for kids to hear us disagree and know that we still love each other. And I think they benefit when they hear us admit when we are wrong and be able to just move on. Well, moving on. Moving on hasn't always been easy for me. I wasn't home when Angus died. Reg and I were actually on our way back from a wedding in New York City when Angus passed away. Sometimes I wonder if things would have been different if we hadn't gone to the wedding or if we had gotten home sooner. We debated about not going. We debated that maybe we should stay home. But the bride was the daughter of a big client, and at the time, attending that wedding seemed so critical for Reg's career. And Angus had been sick with the measles, but the doctor said he was on the mend. And we left the wedding before dinner was served. We were absolutely famished when we got back to Greenwich. So we decided to stop for just a quick bite at the yacht club. And they were closing, but the cooks offered to make us a couple sandwiches. When the kitchen phone rang, my stomach dropped. I knew that Angus had died. I'm sure the neighbors knew we'd stopped there and told the police. The measles vaccine came out the year after Angus died. He just missed it. Our family has had our share of difficulties. But now Reg and I, we spend the full month of April in Florida where we can rest and revive ourselves. Most of our kids and our grandkids come down for a full week, and we have a big family time. And when we're alone, we play tennis and bridge, we do our taxes, and we read. Sometimes I walk alone on the beach, listening to the waves. I cry for long stretches on those walks. I think all that walking and crying helps soothe my soul. Cindy recently asked if Reg and I still have sex. I told her, of course we still have sex. Not the kind when we had in our 20s, but we certainly still have sex. Kids don't want to think about their parents having sex, let alone having it in their 60s. But it's important for a relationship, and it's fun. Sometimes you don't think you want to have sex, but you can steer your mind, and your body follows, and once you get going, You never regret it. You know, there are other things that keep our relationship strong. Since Reg and I are together every day, I value my independence. I play tennis and bridge with Mary Kirk and Jackie and Marge and Harriet, and when I go to the hairdresser, I enjoy hours of my own thoughts. Reg, though, he's not as interested in time alone. He says, since the kids grew up, he comes to the grocery store with me now because he thinks I chat too much and take too long. Well, guess what? I still chat while he takes the list and gets the shopping done. Oh, after all these years, he goes to church with me. Father Kelleher even asked him to collect the offering and bring up communion. On many Sundays, old Reg hobbles up the aisle on his bum knee, standing out like a sore thumb in his mango corduroys and his LL Bean chamois shirt. I mean, his Protestant mother must roll in her grave knowing he's at a Catholic mass. Well, I do think going to church, it calms him down. It's good for him. I think he's an even more patient, friendly innkeeper who gives people a wonderful experience. Even when he takes them to the back bunk room, he'll take them through the halls, down through the halls, gets into the bunk room, and he waves his long arm as if he's casting a spell. Somehow, the guests ooh and they ah as he presents 10 bunk beds with those scratchy old Civil War blankets, still working them, in this cramped, drafty room with an uneven floor. They think they're back at summer camp. Oh, one night, it rained so hard that Reg couldn't pump the water out of the dining room as fast as it was flooding. So he scrapped together some wooden planks for the guests to walk to their seats. Water running all around. He put plants all around the table, some of them fake. And he brings them in and he stretches out his arm, the old signature wave, and he says, "Welcome to the rainforest." They squealed with delight and booked for the next year. Every single time we finish running an event, Reg comes back to the office and he collapses in his chair and he says, "Nance, we made it." As if the whole thing would have gone to hell in a handbasket. Even if we have a catastrophe, we always make it. But he's surprised every single time. He treats every task and each event like a mission to complete. When Cindy comes over to help him make beds, their banter is a riot. He'll say, "Okay, Pins, we're going to conquer these beds, forge on to the back rooms, and win the battle." He takes it all so seriously. Reg is also in charge of the towels and the linens. His ranking system for the towels is very specific and known only to him. He keeps stashes and stacks of towels all around the inn. Some are older than our children. But I do know, he's at the ready. You got to be at the ready. You never know if the world will end or JCPenney stops selling towels. Anyone who stays in that back bunk room, they get one of the Margies, Those are marginal towels with a frayed edge. Then there are the Fooey's. Those are the rattiest towels in the whole collection. And they're only put into commission if he's absolutely desperate and the family comes home. Well, I actually have a rule when the family comes home. It's got 30 people home for days on end. My rule is that after every meal, the kitchen needs to be relatively clean, so whoever's making the next meal can start fresh. So at a recent gathering, Reg and I were having an early lunch, and I asked the kids in earshot in the kitchen who left the half-eaten pot of oatmeal on the stove. And they all blamed Crawford, who admitted it was his. But then he asked if he could leave it around for an afternoon snack. His wives and his girlfriends have let Mr. Handsome get away with too much. A disservice to the rest of us, really. I couldn't help myself. I said, Crawford Pierce, no one around here cares how good you are in bed. Clean the oatmeal pot. Reg almost spit out his food when I said that. And I don't usually say such naughty things or make fun of our kids, really, but that is bad form. Even Crawford chuckled while he cleaned the pan. I do wonder if I may have been harder on our 4 girls than I was the boys. My father was cruel to my 2 brothers. He emasculated them. And maybe I've overcorrected and let the boys get away with a little bit more. But I'll tell you what, I was exhausted. And I handed the baton to Reg any chance I got. And I'm lucky I could always lean on him. I do worry about his health, though. A couple years ago, we were driving to Florida, and Reg collapsed in a hotel bathroom. And I thought it was the end. But after a night in the hospital and a prescription for a blood thinner, we headed off to Florida. It's hard to know whether we should stop innkeeping so Reg can take it easy, or if not having something to do would kill him. Maybe organizing his Margies and Fooey's keeps him going. Many of our retired friends, they are down in the dumps with too much time on their hands and really no purpose. And we always had a plan. Reg and I, a long time ago, decided that we were going to work until one of us dropped dead on the kitchen floor. Oh, there are days when we're up against it with a broken furnace, a leak in the roof, frozen pipes. But we feel like we have a blessed life. Who cares if Reg is a high-strung cheapskate who drinks too many martinis? We all have our flaws, don't we? But I'll tell you what, Reg Pierce finds the good in people and the positives in life every single day. And I am lucky to be with him. Even his college friends say he was a connector of people. When Reg's mother, Marion, first dropped him off at Dartmouth, she met his roommate, Ed Addix, who was doing sit-ups on the floor without a shirt on. Marion immediately disliked Ed because he was Jewish and because she thought not wearing a shirt was disrespectful. Reg was so embarrassed by her prejudice, he dismissed her out the door. But early on, Reg could see that Ed was mistreated around campus. And back in those days, men who were Jewish or black were openly excluded and disrespected at Dartmouth. When the old Psi U guys came along and asked Reg to join their fraternity, he agreed, as long as they invited his roommate Ed. When they said no, Reg didn't accept. You better believe those guys changed their mind. Ed and Reg became Sayu brothers together. He was such a good man. And a couple years at Dartmouth, after a couple years, a lot of guys joined the military when World War II was in full swing. And Reg was in the Navy, and while he was in the Philippines training, they ordered him into the PT boats to head to Japan to fight. Just as they were about to take off, word got in that the war was over. Can you imagine? Gearing up mentally for battle, and then learning that we'd already won the war. Oh. And then after the war, all the U.S. Navy ships docked on a giant pier in San Diego over the course of many weeks. And there were thousands of men pouring off these ships, filling the pier. And sailors didn't know whether their friends had made it or not. Strangely enough, Reg's old buddies, Swampy Marsh and Wemo Phillips, just happened to run into each other on that giant pier. They decided to hang around in case one of their other buddies came along. Off in the distance, those two spotted a tall, gangly guy with a bit of a hobble. And when they were certain it was their old pal, Reg Pierce, they both burst into tears. And they cried and they laughed at the incredible odds of running into each other. That story, it just touches my heart every time I think of it. In August of 2003, Reg was scheduled to have a polyp removed from his large intestine. They took him off his blood thinner to get him ready for the procedure, but he ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. They rushed to get him back on his blood thinner, but he ended up having a stroke, followed by a massive stroke the next day. Over the years, Reg and I had discussed how neither one of us wanted any heroic measures or to live in a compromised state. And in the end, it was clear. Family gathered over the next few days to say goodbye. We were in his room all day and all night. Oh. Reg's sister and brother were there, and we had our kids and our grandkids and some of the spouses. Oh, we decided to take him off life support on a Thursday morning, but Reg lived on. But then at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday, most of the kids were out in the waiting room. They were all asleep in the room and mostly out there. And the nurse came in and she said Reg was about to go. So we gathered everyone around him, and with our hands on his heart, Reg took his last breath. Sometimes I think Reg grabbed a quiet moment and departed the world. Well, we spent some time all together around him, and then the kids all went back to the inn to sleep for just a couple hours before they rose up to get Pierce's Inn all ready to host a rehearsal dinner for a wedding that night. They all pitched in to shop and cook and clean. They had a mission to complete, just the way old Reg would have wanted. Well occupied rather than wallowing in all their sadness. Here's something interesting to me. Absolutely interesting. We had retired the year before, and Reg's final innkeeping task was to schedule, plan, and collect the recipes for the menu for a rehearsal dinner on August 8th. And he died on that exact day. Here's another bit of fascinating timing. Our baby Reg was a great comfort to me during those days. He was making calls to friends and family to let them know the sad news. And when he called Ed Addicks, he reached his son, who reported that his father had also died the day before on August 8th. 3 years later, Reg's dear pal, Bob Kirk, died on August 8th. The college freshman roommates dying on the same day, and his dear pal, our dear pal, dying 3 years later on the same day. That feels mysterious and somehow comforting to me. I felt like I lost half myself when Reg died. I was unmoored, actually. I had to pull myself together. And luckily, I had family next door. About a year and a half before Reg died, he thought we should sell the inn, retire, sell it to Cindy and Bruce, our daughter and her husband, and move next door to the chalet. Well, I wasn't ready to retire. I liked being a busy innkeeper. But Reg seemed to think there was a small window of opportunity to keep the inn going. And the fact that our kid wanted to run the inn fully aware of the financial strain and the hard work attached to it seemed like a chance we needed to grab before they changed their mind. Oh, Cindy and Bruce, they took over the inn with 3 children under 5. Reg and I knew they were well suited for innkeeping. Cindy's high energy keeps things moving, but she's lucky to have a solid man like Bruce to ground her. Oh, Bruce, he is such a nice, friendly soul and a terrific cook. You know what? He learned how to build and repair things at Pierce's Inn just the way Reg did back in the day. We handed over some great biz to Cindy and Bruce when we retired. The most interesting group was, and still is, the silent meditation group. They don't eat cheese, meat. They don't want sugar. They ask for vegan meals, which is different than vegetarian. They don't even eat quiche. And the participants, they sit on mats for 30 to 60 minutes at a time. Over the course of the whole weekend, they don't say a word. Apparently, this helps them resolve their issues in life. And at meals, they sit alone and they stare ahead and they eat very slowly. We were informed that they were eating mindfully, paying attention to each bite. It looked absolutely excruciating. Then, a couple times during the weekend, they spread out all over the property to walk mindfully, stepping slowly, feeling the grass under their feet. And the neighbors always check in, asking why our guests wander around like zombies on the lawn. And now that Cindy takes charge of this group, she joins right in with all that mindfulness. Perhaps she's resolving some of her issues. I thought that Cindy and Bruce might need our help learning the ropes. But Reg seemed to think that they could figure it out, and he thought it was bad form for me to be yelling out suggestions to the new innkeepers from our porch. Now that Reg is gone, Bruce invites me over. Those damn phones. For goodness sakes. You can't help yourself, you young people. Get that figured out, for goodness sakes. I'm not going to kick you out, but for goodness sake. Where was I? Okay. So, Reg is gone now, and Bruce invites me over to help serve breakfast on the weekends. I think, he understands that I might feel lonely. It's very hard living without Reg after all those years. It's hard to be alone because I have so much time to think about the past, including the difficult times of the past. I wish I had known more back then. I now understand that it must have been traumatic for all of our children when Angus and Rodney died, but particularly for Reggie and Crawford. Reggie had gone to check on Angus and found he wasn't breathing. Angus's throat had swollen shut. Well, the babysitter took action, and the police and the ambulance arrived very quickly. But both boys, who were just 12 and 11, actually saw them trying to revive Angus while we were on our way home. The day after was so difficult. Reg and I were in bed, and the kids, the younger kids, trickled in, sensing something was going on. And Reg was paralyzed by grief. Paralyzed. And I knew that I needed to be the one to speak. So I told the children that Angus had died. But then I announced that we had a new baby coming in November. I think I put the good news in with the horrible news to distract myself. And hoping by focusing on something positive might alleviate some of their pain. Oh. In those days, we didn't talk about our feelings the way people do now. Reg and I were consumed with our own sadness, devastated to lose Angus just 5 months after Rodney died. A family cannot possibly prepare for such sorrow. I couldn't get out of bed most mornings during that first year. Reg and I had tried to convince ourselves to not feel regret about going to that wedding. But now I do feel regret. Some parents turn against each other when they lose a child, but Reg and I, we turned towards each other. We didn't blame one another. We just privately shared our pain. But we didn't do that with our children. And now I wish that I had understood the need to balance moving on with tending one's heart. Despite all the difficulty and the hard times for our family, our kids have thrived. We had always hoped they would end up happily married like we were, that they'd have someone to lean on like we did. And they all got married, and a few got divorced. And divorce can be a blessing. They all ended up happy whether they remarried or not. Well, after Polly divorced, her golf pals set her up on a date with a really nice guy. Oh, they had some fun times together until she found out he spent 6 months a year with his parents at a nudist colony. How about that for a shocker? Well, she wasn't interested. And luckily, she's an independent person who's just fine on her own. Polly inspired me. I decided I'm just fine on my own, too. My widow friends warned me about the single fellas waiting to pounce. I never felt burdened taking care of Reg during his final years. But there is not a chance in hell that I would sign up to take care of some other old guy with ailments. Two weeks after Reg died, the vultures started circling. I got a letter, more like a resume, from an old friend of ours, hoping that I'd come visit him for a few days. And he mentioned in the letter that he needed to be hooked up to an oxygen tank three times a day, otherwise mobile. I hadn't been on a date in over 53 years, and I had no intention of starting with some guy on oxygen. Reg lived to be 79 years old, and we were blessed with a wonderful marriage and terrific kids and grandkids. Reg almost lived long enough to meet our first great-granddaughter, Lily. And every Thanksgiving, Reg gave a toast reminding us that family is the fabric of this great nation. Reg was so proud of all of our children, all of our grandchildren. And even though he didn't use the word love out loud with the kids and grandkids, each of them, they felt his love. Reg and I said, "I love you," every single night before we went to sleep. Those were the last words he said to me before he had a stroke. I'll carry those words in my heart till the day I die.
My dear, please know you are my home. This love is pure, always I'm yours. When all else fades away, your love is in my veins. I'll fight every moment through hard times. I'll keep believing that you and I, till death do us part.
Almost every day, I receive an email asking if I'm interested in penis enlargement. I write them back and tell them that I'm an old woman who doesn't even have a penis. All the kids say that those emails are like junk mail. Well, in all my years, nothing showed up in my mailbox offering penis enlargement. The banks also write, and they ask me to verify my personal information. Well, I can't find my account numbers because Cindy took my checkbook and my computer. Oh, goodness. Apparently, my daughters don't think I can manage my finances. Fine. Let Cindy the boss take charge. She could take some lessons from her brothers. My kind boys would never take away my checkbook or my computer. Oh, McGregor is such a good soul. When I talk to him and he visits, he listens to my worries and he understands my problems. And when Crawford visits, we talk all day. Sometimes I have to take a little nap. Then when I wake up, we keep talking. Reg always said that the kids like to talk to me because I'm the great Swami. They tell me I can't say that word anymore. I can't remember why it's not okay, but it's really too hard to keep track of all those things. When baby Reg visits, he helps me with my computer. He doesn't do the Facebooks himself, but he got me an account. Oh, Reg is a computer genius. But he can't seem to figure out how to get me signed back into the Facebooks. But it doesn't matter because Cindy took the computer. She did bring me some special cream for my sore neck. It's called CBD cream. Apparently they make it out of marijuana. Cindy says they take out the part that makes people get loopy. Well, it's probably a good thing I wouldn't want to get kicked out of my activities if they think I'm all hopped up on drugs. When she brought that cream, I said, will all the druggies down on Main Street think I'm part of the gang? Guess not. She does take care of me, even though she's bossy. The other inmates at Wheelock Terrace are jealous because I have my own little salon. Cindy does my nails, she gives me massages, and she plucks all my chin hairs. I mean, what would my mother say if she sees me in the hallway with a beard? I haven't heard from my mother in a long time. I think I'd like to send her an email. Cindy took the darn computer. Gosh. You know, some of my advisors, I told Cindy, some of my advisors suggested that I sue her for taking the computer. And apparently we have the same lawyer, Eric Jansen. And she assured me she would call him up and he would get a lawsuit in motion right away. I'd call him myself, but they took the phone. They say I call everyone too often. But I get confused. I don't know who's going to pick me up from my hotel. I'm all packed up. I'm ready to go. And they say it's not a hotel. They say it's my new home. But I can't remember if any of my 9 children ever visit me. Sarah visits me. Sarah. Oh, all her children, she has 5 children. They're all grown and out in the world. She's just like me with all those kids. She even looks like me. You know, when she visits, she brings me bouquets of flowers that don't need any water. I don't know how she does that. Sometimes I get the Wheelock Terrace staff to call Bruce on the phone. And I tell him that my arm is numb, which gets Bruce moving. A numb arm could be a stroke, you know. We always have such a good time together at the emergency room. One time, Bruce left work to take me to the ER. Turned out I had food poisoning. My friend at Bridge had given me a leftover chicken burrito to take home for dinner, so I put it in my purse. But we played bridge for hours. Doctor said it was a no-no for a chicken burrito to sit in the pocketbook for the whole afternoon. I was back at Bridge the next day, a little tired. But they expect me to be there to run the bridge game at the senior center. I was the oldest employee in the town of Hanover for years. But I guess being in your 90s is too old for a job. And then the kids thought I should give up driving after the car incident. I couldn't quite remember where I parked. But the nice policeman sat with me for hours, while another policeman searched the whole town of Hanover for my car. They were more than happy to do that for me. My birthday was something very special. 44 family members gathered for my birthday and Thanksgiving on the same day at Pierce's Inn. I guess people said some nice things. I didn't pay any attention to that. But almost 21 of the grandkids were there and 8 of the great-grandkids. One of the babies' names is Reginald Franklin Pierce V, named after his father, who's the son of my son, Reg, who's the son of my Reg, whose father, Sweeney's real name was Reg. How about that? I held that little guy, hugged him, rocked him. Oh. Polly also visits me. She does. And when she comes, she takes me out to lunch, which is a real treat. She's such a relaxing person to spend time with. She's patient and calm, not in a rush like some of my other children. Well, I told Polly about the time my father hired a chorus of singers to drive up to New Hampshire to sing the announcement that he would exclude his children in the will. Polly seemed to think there was just one man who met me at the co-op. But there was actually 12 people, a whole chorus, dressed in long white robes, and they had big white angel wings on their backs. And they stood at the edge of the parking lot, and it was a full parking lot, and they sang that my father intended to treat my children as if they never existed. Polly insisted there was no chorus. I remember it like it was yesterday. Every day, I see my father in the dining hall at Wheelock Terrace. And he sits by himself, reading the newspaper, and he doesn't talk to anyone. What a bastard. I tell my girls, they should feel lucky that they're allowed to speak their minds. I told Cindy I should kick my father in the balls for the way he treated my mother. Cindy almost fell off her chair when I said that. She thinks that my difficult father inspired me to raise daughters to be strong, independent women. And she says I raised boys who chose strong, independent women. And one son, Crawford, who chose 4 strong, independent women. which made me laugh. I'd laugh. And it made me cry. My heart still aches for our precious son Angus, who died of the measles when he was just about 4. We had to park 3 houses away because there were so many emergency vehicles on the street. I almost collapsed when I saw the devastated expression on the fireman's face when he came out holding little Angus under a blanket. My memory, it fails me so often these days. But those details stay vivid in my mind. Winky and I, we have some good cries when we talk about Angus. When she visits, she takes me to the movies and we cook, we dance, and we laugh together. Winky and I, we can feel Reg and Rodney and Angus watching over our whole family. I think the good Lord was watching over me when he nudged Reg to walk through that storm to get to the party where we met. And it was meant to be that we had 9 children. Reggie, Crawford, Polly, McGregor, Winky, Sarah, Cindy, Rodney, and Angus. Reg and I, we had such a blessed life together. Even on those long days when we never left the Pierce's Inn kitchen, he made it feel like a great adventure. The moment I shook Reg's hand, I knew he was the one.